Hi, my name is Sherwin Lai. I'm the Interp captain at Bellarmine for the 2019-20 school year. Today, in our skills video, I'll be covering the climax of your speech, of your piece, and how we build up to the climax. First, we'll quickly review where the climax belongs in your speech, and then we'll actually look at a few examples, contrasting examples of climaxes, in fact, and discuss them. And finally, we'll bring up some key points of things we need to keep in mind when we're building up to the climax. And then we'll end on another example if time permits. So let's get into it. So remember our dramatic plot structure. We start with the exposition, have the conflict, we build up to the rising action, till we hit the climax, and then we build down the falling action, and then we end with the denouement and the resolution. Remember that the climax is the highest part of your speech. It should be the most intense, with the highest energy. Now, one misconception is that all successful climaxes have to involve a lot of volume and yelling and just like super high energy. And that's actually not the case. I would say the climax is the part where you cover the most emotional distance, and that actually may happen whether it's like the loudest part or not. So I'll cover that a bit later. But the key part you need to know for now is that the climax is the key pivotal point of your piece. And everything else should really revolve around that point, including building in and coming out of it. So first, let's look at two contrast examples. The first example I have for you is from Daniel Williams, who is the national champion in 2015. We're not going to watch the whole thing. We're going to watch the segment of the climax. So let's take a look.
Well, there it was again. I thought no one was home, so I followed the noise up the stairs. To my mother's room. It was Sylvester. He had my mother's head and he was kicking it against the wall. So I ran down the stairs and I got the sharpest knife I could. And I ran up and I kicked down the door and I said, stop it, just let her go, please.
So what, you think you a man now? Boy, don't you know that I could kill you? Little nigga.
So I kept my eyes on him, but he was too fast, and all of a sudden he just... I couldn't breathe. And my mother screamed, but her scream was stopped by the sound of the police!
Police had come to the door. And just like that, he was gone. That was my father. The same low down. The same no good. The same good for nothing. The same person that no one had ever accused of not being a genuine black man. And that's the thing that I don't get about this letter. You see, you got all these guys, right? Out in South Side and out in Compton selling crack and having 5 different babies for 5 different women, and no one is accusing them of not being genuine black men. That's what the person who wrote this letter wants me to be. They want me to be Sylvester. No, I had a fantasy that one day I'd meet the person who wrote me this letter. And I would go up to them, and I would shove it in their face and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I don't deal drugs. I'm sorry that I want a better life for myself. I'm sorry that all of my children were born into wedlock and that I support them. I'm sorry that I'm not going to teach my kids that getting good grades is acting white. I'm sorry that I refuse to live in a neighborhood where I'm awakened in the middle of the night by the sounds of screams and sirens and gunshots. I'm sorry that I look so bad in an orange jumpsuit that I'm not going to prison for anybody. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. God. I'm sorry. I'm not like that. Really.
Okay, so that clearly was a very intense climax. Now we're going to look at, and don't worry, I'll discuss that and debrief that in a bit, but we're going to move on to this other example of Crafty, which was the runner-up in 2012, actually, I believe. So this is incorrect, I'm sorry. And you'll see that this climax is actually quite different.
So I stayed there until, well, let's use one of those euphemisms, until he passed away. And you know, maybe that's why euphemisms got invented, not because people are ashamed, but because they hate the real word too much. And I hated that word. And I hated that disease. For the longest time, I just went to work and I came home. I didn't touch a thing. Not a needle, not a bobbin, not a pair of pinking shears. I would not bring beauty or joy or rickrack into this world. I was just too... I was just too sad. But then on the TV, I saw that quilt. You know, 75,000 squares, each for a different man, woman, and child. And I look at it and I think, my Lord, it's like a cemetery created by the Ladies' Home Journal. So I got a piece of hot pink felt and all the trims and braids that Hank had given me, and I sewed them on. And I embroidered his name. Oh, and I sewed on his favorite t-shirt that says, "No one knows I'm gay." Only I changed it so it says, "No one knows I'm from Decatur." Oh, but that was ages ago, and you know, now they've got medicine, so people, well, some people can keep going. And you know, they have got all new ways to hurt people. Like that 9/11. You know, recently I was in the city for a cake decorating competition. It was cutthroat. And you know, I couldn't go downtown because it was so terrible and because that's where Hank lived, so I walked over to Central Park. And in the park, they were having this, oh God, somebody called it an installation by some fancy French artist. And in the park, he'd put up these archways. These big aluminum gates. From the top at the center, there was a bright orange curtain. And I looked at it and I thought, well, now I know what an installation is, just a giant French crafts project. So I stood there. And the sun came out, and the breeze was blowing all those orange curtains back and forth. And you know, it didn't make any sense. But it was very pretty. And you know, I asked the woman next to me, I said, does this installation and all this orange fabric, does it make people feel better? And she said, yes, it does. And you know, I hadn't talked about him in so long. But I stood there under one of those gates and I told her about Hank. And I asked her if she was there on 9/11, and she said yes. And I asked her if she lost anybody. And she said yes. You know, I don't know if I believe in God anymore.
So let's first talk about the first one, Not a Genuine Black Man. We see that it's clearly a lot more intense than the one done in Crafty. It's also louder in volume. Now, the key point to keep in mind for Not a Genuine Black Man is even though he did get very loud eventually in the latter half of his climax, there's always an intensity to back that up. So he wasn't just screaming for the sake of screaming. There was that intense anger, that like frustration with a misunderstanding. You could clearly see an emotion and that intensity that was backing up the volume. In other words, it's not enough to just have volume. If you want to have volume, you always need to have that intensity to back up that volume. And when we saw a very impressive and very effective, in my opinion, execution of that principle, Not Genuine Black Man, where he wasn't just screaming for sake of screaming, but there was a build up to it. And again, he didn't jump from 0 to 100 and start screaming all of a sudden. We saw he get more and more frustrated, more and more angry, and there's that gradual build up in motion that you can see that really drives the audience into the climax as opposed to forcing us right into it. That's what's really effective at it. Now, Crafty, on the other hand, we see doesn't use as much like full-out intensity, I would say. I think there's still intensity. I would say it doesn't use as much volume. And that's the key point I wanted to make by showing you this example, is that even though intensity and volume are effective in many cases, like in Not a Genuine Black Man, it is possible to perform a climax very well and very effectively without using as much volume. As we see in Crafty, we see that more nuanced, more subtle, even more still portrayal of emotion, whether it's from Hank dying and her resorting to using euphemism, all the way until her seeing like that beauty of the huge quilt in New York and reflecting upon her relationship with her son and having that conversation with the woman on the side about 9/11. All of those moments showed a lot of intense emotion, actually, even if there's not a lot of volume. There's a lot of intensity. And we can actually, if you go back and revisit Crafty, you'll see that her eyes, not just her eyebrows, but her eyes specifically, and her vocal expression skillfully portrayed that climax. So I guess the main point I'm trying to make here is that there's not a singular way to approach the climax, and it's not always to try to be as loud and as emotional, as sad and cryy and yelly as possible, right? A lot. It's about covering the most emotional distance and being realistic in that portrayal as well. So here are a few tips to keep in mind about building up to the climax. First, your body control, your eye contact, all your facial expressions need to be controlled and clean. Just because we're becoming more intense is not a reason for you to start inserting more movements that may be extraneous, start darting your eyes around or blinking a lot, doing a lot of unnecessary facial expressions. It still needs to be clean to drive home that emotion you're trying to build up to. Make sure we layer in emotions gradually so it doesn't sound like a rapid 0 to 100 shift emotionally, right? Remember, Not a Genuine Black Man. Instead of just jumping to that very loud part, which I feel would be very disconcerting, Daniel Williams effectively built that up by starting from like kind of just frustration to more indignance and then eventually to anger. So it's not only a gradual scale in terms of intensity build up, but it's also using a wide variety and complexity of emotions as well. And finally, don't rush. Make sure to build to the climax. It's not too fast or too slow. It needs to hit. There are two problems I see. First one is you just keep rushing through it because you're just going through emotions. You hit the climax, go as fast as you can, and that really compromises point number 2 here. Building up the emotions gradually because you're rushing, and even might compromise number 1 because a lot of times when you rush, stuff becomes unclean, right? So keep on, we're not too fast, but also you don't want it to be too slow. Another problem is I see people build a little and then it kind of stagnates out for a few seconds, and then builds and then stagnates and builds and stagnates, right? It needs to be one continuous loop, so one continuous slope. So that's what I mean by not too slow. Okay, so we were able to look at 2 examples from DIs and dissect them. For you people doing multiple characters or you H-hires out there, I wanted to show you this last example from H-hire.
Leah, I don't think I can. I don't want to screw it up. Literally. You're probably moving on, and I'm probably going back to Earth because I'm always just so afraid. I'm always just so worried. Well, you genuinely care for this woman, don't you, Mr. Miller? Why didn't you spend the night with her? Why were you so scared? Whoa, okay, I object. Your Honor, he was being cautious. He could have thought she had a disease. Did you think she had a disease? No, but he didn't know. Didn't you die of a disease? So young. AIDS? What? No, I didn't have AIDS. I was afraid, okay? I was afraid. That's all. That's all we wanted to hear. Your Honor, your decision, please. Mr. Miller, Mr. Diamond, walk with me. Now, it fills me with deep despair to inform you that you're going back to Earth tonight. Everyone, you're not moving onward. So what you gotta do is just go over there and step onto that big old moving walkway. Wait, I'm going back to Earth now? Better luck next time. Wait, I can't go back to Earth now. I never got to tell her I like her. Oh, I guess this is really it. Daniel, Julia, Daniel, I didn't get to say goodbye. Julia, there's something I have to tell you. Excuse me, sorry. Can you please move? You remind me of my little poodle. Don't touch me, Julia, no. Julia, oh, come on. Leave it! Julia, Julia, I don't think I have a lot of time to say this, but I like you. You like me? I like you a lot, and I'm not afraid to say it. No, that's not how it works. He has to go back. Oh, calm down. He faced his fears. Good job, Daniel. You can stay. Thank you. Julia, I just want you to get to know the real me. I wasn't Jesus Christ. Okay. I was a porn star. Okay.
So that's the HI climax. Clearly, you can see there's a lot of technical skill involved, to say the least, to really put on an effective climax. You can also see there was a lot of energy involved in this climax, and there was also a build-up, right? Starting from like the prosecutor arguing and him admitting that he was afraid. I think that's a key pivotal moment. And then finally, a transformational moment. And then finally, that whole scene when he's like sliding down the escalator, very entertaining to look at for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Feel free to discuss more with your peers or with your captains, this video is probably already running long. Okay, so that's about it for your for this lecture on climaxes. Hopefully those video examples were helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, ask your captains or your coaches. And until next time, that's about it.